I'm going to read excerpts from an article I found on Scientific American that summarizes this history. Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld was ahead of his time in understanding gender-fluid and non-binary identities. In July of 1919 in Berlin, Germany, he founded the Institute for Sexual Research. It provided sex education and health clinics, advice on contraception, and research on gender and sexuality. It even held a printing house for sex reform journals that were meant to dispel myths about sexuality. After many years of research, the Institute grew to house an immense library that included protocols for hormone therapy and male-to-female surgical transition. In 1930, the Institute was performing the world's first modern gender-affirming surgeries. By 1932, the Nazi Party was the largest political party in Germany, growing its numbers through a nationalism that targeted immigrants, the disabled, and the, quote, genetically unfit. Once Hitler was named chancellor on January 30th, 1933, he enacted policies to eradicate Germany of, quote, lives unworthy of living. On May 6, 1933, while Hirschfeld was out of the country, the Institute for Sexual Research and the majority of its library and research archives were destroyed by the Nazi Party and its sympathizers. Troops swarmed the building, carrying off more than 20,000 of his precious books, some of them rare copies that had helped provide a historical record for queer and gender nonconforming people. The books were piled in the street and engulfed in fire. It was among the first and largest of the Nazi book burnings, and was broadcast over German newsreels while voiceovers of the footage declared that the German state had committed, quote, the intellectual garbage of the past, end quote, to the flames. The collection was irreplaceable. Hirschfeld's partner Carl Giese and his medical student protege Li Shuitong fled with what they could to join Hirschfeld in Paris. The three of them continued to live together as partners and colleagues with the hopes of rebuilding the Institute until the growing threat of the Nazi occupation in Paris required them to flee to Nice. Hirschfeld died of a sudden stroke in 1935 while still on the run. Giese died by suicide in 1938. Tong abandoned his hopes of opening an institute in Hong Kong for a life of obscurity abroad. The history of Hirschfeld's clinic has been effectively erased, so effectively, in fact, that although the Nazi newsreels still exist and the pictures of the burning library are often reproduced, few know they feature the world's first transgender clinic. The destruction of the Institute for Sexual Research came after only 96 days of Hitler being in power. The Nazi ideal had been based on white, cisgender, heterosexual masculinity, masquerading as genetic superiority. Any who strayed were considered as depraved, immoral, and worthy of total eradication. What began as a project of protecting German youth and raising healthy families had become a mechanism for genocide. The future doesn't always guarantee progress, and the story of the Institute for Sexual Research sounds a warning for our present moment. Current legislation bears a striking resemblance to those terrible campaigns against so-labeled aberrant lives. Looking back on the story of Hirschfeld's Institute, his protocols not only for surgery, but for a trans-supportive community of care, for mental and physical healing, and for social change, it's hard not to imagine a history that might have been. As we confront oppressive legislation today, may we find hope in the history of the Institute and a cautionary tale in the Nazis who were bent on erasing it. And let's not forget the genocide currently being perpetuated on Gaza as we speak. Free Palestine.